Good afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, we'll be joined by John Fanta to talk some Cavs as well as some Indians. Indians over at Progressive Field getting ready for Game 2 of a 3-game set against Tigers. But we begin by talking Browns. Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, will join us in just a minute. We want to share this with you. Former NFL front office executive Mike Lombardi was also part of the Browns front office. Had this to say about whether he would extend Baker Mayfield this season.
What I would say, probably what the Browns are saying, is let's see how well he plays again this year. Let's keep going. Let's keep the carrot in front of him. And, you know, look, the Browns have lived through this, and I worked for Jimmy Haslam, and he understands the value of the quarterback. And he knows he finally has one now, you know, and he feels comfortable. And they have the scheme. You know, he has a coach and a quarterback. Those are things that you can go a long, long way in the NFL. When you marry those two players, two people together, the coach and the quarterback, the system matches the talent of the player. I think Baker Mayfield's a good player. I do not think Baker Mayfield's great. When you watch some of the throws the offense gets him, when you watch some of those throws, guys are wide open. Now, he makes some tough throws. There's no denying it. But he's going to need that scheme to be most successful. Now, the question is, Baker, if I give you all this money, how do I pay Kareem Hunt? How do I pay all these other guys?
Let's bring in Dan Labbe. And Dan, there's a certain amount of truth to that, what Mike Lombardi is saying, but I'm not sure I wholeheartedly agree with him.
Yeah, well, Michael Lombardi making the point there to keep the carrot in front of Baker Mayfield maybe, and that's what the Browns have to decide. Do you want to, kind of keep that motivation there for Baker? Do you want to pay him early? Because look, for Baker, I don't think you need to necessarily find motivation. I think he'll find motivation wherever he needs it. So if you pay him, I think he'll find motivation someplace else. If you don't, he'll find motivation in that. So I think that I think whatever the Browns decide to do, Baker Mayfield is going to find some way to put that chip on his shoulder and stay motivated, whether he gets paid this summer or not.
The other thing is Baker Mayfield doesn't have to carry a team. That's not what they're going to ask him to do. So this whole system quarterback thing, where were people saying that when he was in Freddie Kitchens' system? That was a bad system for him.
Unfortunately, Dave, I can't hear you.
I said, you know, where was this system quarterback talk when Baker Mayfield was in Freddie Kitchens' offense? You didn't hear that because it was a bad system for him. All right. Well, we're gonna try to get that straightened out. So we're gonna step aside, take a quick time out, and try to reestablish our contact with Dan Labbe. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. Let's bring back in Dan Labbe and let's see if we can communicate with Dan. Dan, can you hear me at this point in time?
I can hear you, yes.
That's a step in the right direction. My question was, he says a little bit, does Mike Lombardi, about Baker Mayfield being a system quarterback, that he was scheme throws open. Where was the talk of Baker Mayfield being a system quarterback when Freddie Kitchens was calling the plays? You didn't hear it because he was in a bad system.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, every quarterback, right? There is a system that they just fit into better. And, Baker Mayfield does benefit from playing in that Kevin Stefanski, system that goes back to Gary Kubiak, the Shanahan system, all of that. That benefits quarterbacks. But you've got to be able to make the plays within that system. And I think what the Browns were able to do in the bye week, sit down with Baker, figure out how to really work around his strengths, put in more rollouts, put in more play action, all of that. It helps make him a better quarterback and helps accentuate some of those strengths he has, like the arm strength, the accuracy, his ability to throw accurately on the run. All of those things exist in any system, but this system kind of helps accentuate a lot of those things and bring those strengths out to the forefront.
So another national reporter for the NFL, Diana Rossini, on ESPN's Get Up, had this to say about Baker Mayfield in year 2 of this system.
The factor seems to be Baker Mayfield and trying to figure out what he is, right? So we look back at his season last year. He had just 8 interceptions. The season before, 21. Let's even look at last season, the first half of it compared to the second half. He was unbelievable. I remember having conversations with defensive coordinators about Baker's accuracy, his athleticism, his decision-making, all the things you want to hear about a quarterback who could help lead you to the playoffs. But is this the real Baker? And here's the advantage that I think Baker Mayfield has going for him this year. He's got a head coach in Kevin Stefanski. He's going to be in his system now for the 2nd year in a row. We know Stefanski's offense is a very similar to the Gary Kubiak, Shanahan style type of offense, right? So now he's going to be in his 2nd year with Stefanski doing this. And when you look at other quarterbacks that have been in that same system, they always take a step forward in their 2nd year in that system. So this could help. We know he's got all the players around him. We know this defense is going to be electric. This is really going to come down, and it's really put up or shut up for Baker Mayfield. Can Baker take that next step?
So what are your thoughts on that, Dan Labbe?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, we talk about it, but then sometimes I think we forget about it, that this guy just hasn't had the type of stability that you need to have to be successful. Even if you look at the guys that are coming up for extensions now in Baker's draft class, Brian Daboll has been paired with Josh Allen for a number of years. John Harbaugh and the Ravens built that system around Lamar Jackson, and he's been in it now really since Joe Flacco left and they handed the keys over to Jackson. So now for Baker, this is his opportunity to show that being comfortable in a system, being comfortable with a head coach and how he likes to call plays. And really the big thing too is having everybody back. There's really no changes that he has to get a feel for on his side of the football. No new receivers, no new backs, all of that stuff. It's just additions on top of what they already had. Everything, like Diana Rossini said, this is kind of the prove it year for Baker Mayfield. And I think everything is set up for him to show everyone that he belongs in that discussion with those other quarterbacks.
And Baker Mayfield kind of lives to prove it to people who doubt him. So Joe Banner, man, we're bringing out all the old front office folks from the Browns. Joe Banner from the 33rdteam.com had an interesting take on Baker Mayfield, and it was paying him $38 million to $40 million a year, which he thought would be a little less than Allen and Lamar Jackson, was a good idea just because the alternative wasn't there. Who are you going to go to? And the other thing he thought was that Baker Mayfield should want that deal. I'm not sure that is the case, but Joe Banner felt like Baker Mayfield should want that deal right now.
And I think with Baker, it might come down to what are the guarantees, right? What's that signing bonus up front? Some of that money that you're going to get up front, because we know these contracts get structured really strangely. I mean, even if you look at Patrick Mahomes' deal, right? We're all blown away by this 10-year, $500 million deal, but then there's little things in there where maybe it's not really worth what we thought it was. A lot of it comes down to that upfront money and what you're going to get. So I think that's going to be important to Baker, the signing bonus, guarantees, things like that. If he has the year we think he can have, he might be able to go out there and say, hey, pay me more than Dak Prescott made. But that being said, 38 to 40 million a year, I don't know that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are going to reset the market too much ahead of that. So it wouldn't be a bad idea for Baker to sign that extension. But the one point that Joe Banner made that I think is completely true is if you're not going to extend Baker, what are your options? You're not going to be bad enough to draft a guy. Are you going to go to Case Keenum? Are you going to sign a free agent out there? I mean, those guys aren't going to be better than Baker Mayfield. This is the guy you kind of have to ride with. And there might be some flaws, but there's also some really high highs with him as your quarterback.
So we're going to go back to ESPN. This is, again, Mike Tannenbaum, who we heard from earlier. We heard from Mike Lombardi, but we're going to hear from Mike Tannenbaum. We'll hear from him again. He's predicting win totals for the Browns for this season. This is what Mike Tannenbaum, former NFL GM, had to say.
And that's going to be second place to Damian Woody's aforementioned Baltimore Ravens winning the AFC North. I know everyone's very bullish on the Browns. I like the Browns. I don't love the Browns. I think a solid 10-7 season is where they're going to wind up.
10-7. That appears a little low to me, but again, just your thoughts on that.
I would predict them to win more games. I would put them in that 11, maybe even to 13 range on the high side. I think that they're going to be good enough to at least go 4-2 in the division, if not go 5-1 somehow, maybe split with Baltimore. It sort of depends on how good Pittsburgh is going to be this year. I think it's going to come down to games like, they have this stretch where they play the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Vikings. So how do they do in that stretch of games? Those are all teams that, week to week could beat you, or, you could run out of the building depending on their performance. And of course, we don't know Denver's full quarterback situation yet. So I think it's going to come down to games like that. They could turn them from being that 10-win team into that 12 or 13-win team. And I think we saw last year, for the most part, the Browns won those games that they were supposed to win. A couple outliers here and there. It happens to every NFL team. But I think this coaching staff is going to have them prepared to go out and beat the teams they're supposed to beat. So I feel like 10 is low.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. All right, CBSSports.com, 10 best coaching matchups for the upcoming 2021 season. Number 9, Kevin Stefanski going back and facing the Vikings, and Mike Zimmer, Week 4, Browns at Vikings. What do you think of that one?
I think it's a little too chalky. Whoever made this list is just a little too easy, okay? Kevin Stefanski going back to face his old boss. I get it. It's interesting. We're going to talk about it all week leading up to the game. There might be some great stories that come out of it. It should be a fun matchup. But, I'm more interested, honestly, in the Stefanski-John Harbaugh matchup year to year. Everybody heard that clip last year with John Harbaugh coming off the field after that classic Monday night game. Harbaugh is never afraid to say what's on his mind. Stefanski won't tell us anything. That's always an interesting dynamic there. That's really the matchup. When those two teams play 2 games over the course of 3 weeks, I want to see that Harbaugh-Stefanski matchup.
The other thing that's intriguing about that is you've got Baker and Lamar. I mean, everything kind of sets up, the Ravens have had the Browns number, and that's, if you want to get to where the Browns want to go, they got to get by the Ravens.
And the Ravens are still a fairly young football team. It's not like they're aging like a lot of like the Steelers are with an aging quarterback. And obviously they have some young weapons on offense and some young players on defense. But the Ravens are still a young team. And I think they really did a good job of rebuilding on the fly without kind of bottoming out, finding Lamar Jackson late in the first round and building around him. And so I think this is kind of the next great AFC North rivalry. The Browns and Ravens are going to be going at it for a long time. And I think these two coaches, especially Harbaugh, he's like I said, he's never shy to say anything. He might take some subtle shots here and there.
And that the old timers will remember it's really the Browns against the Browns, but you got to be of a certain age to appreciate that one. All right. So the Bleacher Report came out with the best value contracts for each and every NFL team. Best value contract for the Cleveland Browns, Wyatt Teller.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good choice. One of the best guards in football. And you look on the other side of J.C. Tretter there at the left guard, you're paying Joel Bitonio. Honestly, his contract has kind of become more valuable over the years, too, based on when you extended him. So, but you compare those two and what you're paying Wyatt Teller, as I believe it was a 5th-round pick. That's pretty good value. The other one, look, the obvious one is it's Baker Mayfield, right? You're still, even when he gets to that 5th-year option, that's still a bargain for a starting quarterback. So those starters on rookie deals, especially if you feel like you can win big with them, that's always a bargain. But Wyatt Teller's up there. Maybe Kareem Hunt is up there even after that extension. The Browns still have some guys, Denzel Ward, until he signs an extension. They've got some guys on some real valuable contracts.
The thing we've talked about a couple of times is the front office with Andrew Berry. How big of an advantage is it to have those guys managing the cap in an area where the cap's going up? You've got a number of guys you want to extend, and you got to keep it all within the framework. I mean, they're going to earn their money, and they're going to prove exactly, what their thought process is over the next couple of years.
Yeah, the one thing you don't have to worry about with them, we'll always talk about talent evaluation and hitting draft picks, signing free agents, and so far that's all off to a great start. But you'll never have to worry about Paul DePodesta, Andrew Berry, who was going to finance, his right-hand man, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who was in finance before he entered the 49ers and then, of course, came to Cleveland. These guys aren't going to screw up the cap. They aren't going to forget to carry a 1. They aren't going to do something where you look and say, what are they thinking there financially? They're going to be really smart about contract structures. They're going to find every loophole. They're going to find every inefficiency and take advantage of it. And they're going to be able to manage this cap moving forward. So, I think it's fun sometimes to sit there and talk about the cap and project and see where guys fit. And I get that, but those guys, Ivy League educated, and there's more people in that front office with the same type of backgrounds. They're going to know how to handle this salary cap.
And the other thing, it's becoming very apparent as you look at it. They're not going to make the emotional decisions that a lot of fans are counting on. And I think Sheldon Richardson is an example of that. I think they wanted to keep him, and the money didn't add up.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to start setting the value at each position. The roster's a little weird now because you have so many young guys on those rookie deals. But now as extensions kick in, we're really going to get an idea of where they want to put their money, the positions that they really value. I think defensive tackle is pretty far down on that list. And so paying Sheldon Richardson as much money as he was making, even though they could afford it, and even though it was the final year of his deal, I just don't feel like they could stomach it. And they wanted that flexibility at a position that they don't necessarily value real highly. When it comes to Nick Chubb, right, they might extend him for reasons beyond the football field, what he means in the locker room, what he means to the fan base, but they're not going to do it in a careless way. And so that's kind of where they're going to strike that mix, I think. And what I like about Andrew Berry so far is, yes, he's an analytics, data-driven guy, but he's also got a scouting background, and you can't really put him in a box. He's going to do what he feels is right, whether it goes against kind of the analytics side or if it goes against the so-called football guy side. He's going to do what he believes is right for the organization.
Well, Dan, you mentioned Nick Chubb. On the other side of the break, we're going to find out what Nick Chubb's extended contract could potentially look like, some parameters, as well as Maurice Jones-Drew, former running back, NFL.com personality, NFL Network as well, what he thinks the Browns need to do to be successful. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions. Should I get it? Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. So on Good Morning Football on NFL Network, Maurice Jones-Drew had this to say about what the Browns need to be successful this year.
First of all, you have to stick with what got you there last year. And that was that running game. That was Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt toting the rock, right? Forcing the defense, put 8 guys into the box, allowing Baker Mayfield to see single covers on the outside with Jarvis Landry and everyone else. This is the most important thing for the Cleveland Browns, is to continue to establish a running game, allow that offensive line to continue to go forward, and then play strong defense. There's no reason to add all those guys and have them on the field for 60, 70-plus plays. Run the ball with Kareem Hunt and get after. Now, let's look at some of these stats here. Look, they were 4th in rushes per game. I'd certainly try to get to 35. But look, 150 yards per game, 4.8 yards per rush, and 21 rushing touchdowns. If you can just emulate that one more time, then you add Odell Beckham for a complete year. The Browns, I mean, you may be talking AFC Championship, possibly Super Bowl.
And Dan Labbe, I think that's a very valid point. That's what this offense begins with.
Yeah, I think the Browns might actually go to the air a little more this year. Well, when I kind of look at how they might attack things, and I think it was trending that way last year in the second half of the year, and especially once they got out of that bad weather, they got to Jacksonville, and over those last few games. I think the idea of establishing the run is great, but I think the Browns are going to look at this, sort of from an analytics standpoint where it's a little more efficient to pass early in games. And it's more efficient to pass on early downs and kind of set up the run that way, try to lighten up those boxes that you're running against. It's sort of the opposite of the idea of, make a defense bring 8 into the box and then throw against it. It's sort of make a defense spread out a little bit and then run against it. I think the run game is still going to be vital to this team. I think they're still going to, they put those rankings up. I think they're still going to rank up there highly in attempts and yardage and all of that. But I do think they're going to be more reliant on the passing game than they were early last season.
All right, we'll get back to that in just a minute. So let's talk about Nick Chubb contract. They're going to try to extend Nick Chubb. That's not a big secret. What do you think a contract extension for Nick Chubb would need to look like?
I think you're probably looking in the range of 4 years and then probably between $50 and $60 million. Now, Christian McCaffrey really reset the market last year. He went, I think it was around 15 or 16 million a year. I don't think Nick Chubb is going to demand that type of money. Now, his agent might sit down and say he wants that type of money, but I think the Browns will simply respond, okay, well, you've got to be able to do all the things Christian McCaffrey does. And the reality is Nick Chubb just doesn't do that. I think he lands more in that Derrick Henry range. He was about 50 million over 4 years. So I think if you kind of set out to do 4 years, 52, 4 years, 56, that's kind of where I would put that sweet spot for Nick Chubb's contract. And then you give yourself flexibility with a lot of these running back contracts right around that age 28 season, where if you start to see a decline, if you start to get into a little bit of a pinch with the cap, you can get out of those contracts fairly easily.
Do you figure it's kind of up front, so there's some money that they saved from the Sheldon Richardson contract that you can use to kind of make that back end of it not quite as big of a hit?
Yeah, I think it'll be a deal where you kind of see the number and you're maybe blown away a little bit. But then when you dig into the contract a little more, you realize, okay, there's a bunch of money up front. There's a bunch of money in the signing bonus. And when you get to year 3, year 4 of the extension, okay, now there's not really any cap hit. If you need to move on, like I said, if he's in decline, whatever happens, you can move on. If he's fine, if he's still the Nick Chubb that we know, and the guy's Adrian Peterson, and he's just never going to stop running, then great, you've got him locked up. I think that's the structure the Browns will seek in this contract.
So you alluded to this a little bit. This was part of the 21 questions about the 2021 Browns that you and cleveland.com, the Plain Dealer, are doing. How will the Browns offense evolve this season? And you got a little into it, so take us through kind of the thought process as what this offense might look like.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they'll rely a little more on the passing game earlier in games, and especially on first down. Last year they were right up there when you kind of looked at some numbers. They were right up there with the likes of Kansas City and Buffalo. They were like a top 5 team when it came to passing in the first quarter of games. And that kind of tells me that the establish the run mentality wasn't necessarily there. It's we're going to come out, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to use the passing game to kind of set up the running game. And again, from an analytics standpoint, I think that's viewed as a more efficient way to do things. And we know that that's sort of what drives this football team. I also think we'll just see more like smaller personnel. Now, I think we'll still see some tight end sets, heavy fullback stuff, but I think we're going to see more 11 personnel with 3 receivers. They might even venture out into 4 receivers, which is something they rarely did last year, because you just have to look at what they have. Odell and Jarvis are going to be on the field a lot. You got to get Rashard Higgins out there. You want to get Anthony Schwartz some looks. You probably want to get Kadarius Hodge on the field a little bit. So they're going to have to spread out a little bit to get those guys some opportunities and get those guys some reps. So I would expect a more aggressive offense, a faster paced offense. And I think it's going to be a fun offense to watch this year.
So they really couldn't venture into some of those things a season ago because there was no training camp. There really wasn't any OTAs. There was no preseason. So it kind of had to be the Kevin Stefanski offense. This is kind of what it is. Do you expect inputs from Alex Van Pelt, from Chad O'Shea, the wide receiver coach, that all bring some different backgrounds and some different twists into it?
Absolutely. And that's the Kevin Stefanski way of doing things. Really, it's just the organizational way of doing things under this current regime. They want ideas to come to the table, and they want to filter through them and pick out the ones they really like. Kevin Stefanski admitted to us he's not afraid to steal things. If he likes something, he'll go steal it from somebody and put it into his offense. So absolutely, they're going to explore some of those things. And the other part of it, I kind of mentioned this a little, is the tempo side of it. Now that they know the offense and they're going to have some time to work on things, and I think they spent a lot of time on this in OTAs and minicamp as well, they're going to be able to do some things with tempo. If you watch the LA Rams last year, Sean McVay loves to mess with tempo. He'll break a huddle and huddle late and snap the ball quickly so the defense can't get lined up. Things like that. I think the Browns are going to be faster. I think they're going to want to control the tempo a little more on offense, and they're going to be capable of doing it this year because they've had some in-person work, and they're going to have a full training camp and some preseason games to work with.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll hear from Mike Tannenbaum and what he thinks of Baker Mayfield, as well as the best moves from each and every one of the 32 teams. We'll tell you what The Athletic thinks the Browns' best move was. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football. Mike Tannenbaum, former general manager in the NFL, had this to say about Baker Mayfield and his extension. This is from Good Morning Football on the NFL Network.
When you look at Kevin Stefanski's track record, they won in Minnesota with Case Keenum. They won with Kirk Cousins. Baker Mayfield is very much a replaceable part. He's had one productive season out of 3. That is not greatness at the quarterback position. So at best, he is the 5th best quarterback in the AFC. The other point that bears noting is injuries can be hugely consequential for the Cleveland Browns. Odell Beckham, Jadeveon Clowney, they have to play in 17 games for this team to be productive. And in the second round, Cleveland drafted Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame. If he could stay healthy, he could be an impact player. But those 3 players need to play 17 games to give Cleveland a chance to go deep in the playoffs.
Let's bring back in Dan Labbe. And Dan, did they say that Matt Ryan is, a replaceable, interchangeable part in Kyle Shanahan's offense? You can put all kinds of labels on guys. I don't think anybody really knows exactly what Baker Mayfield is as an NFL quarterback for certain yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it just goes back to this idea of, what's your alternative, right? So he mentioned Case Keenum, that Kevin Stefanski won with Case Keenum. Well, then they let Case Keenum walk immediately after that. And he signed a big money contract in Denver. Denver traded him to Washington. Washington let him go. I mean, that's kind of how this works. If you have a guy that you trust, if you have a guy that you believe can run your system, if you have a guy that can excel in your system, what's your alternative? Are you going to hand the keys over to Case Keenum? Are you going to dip into free agency? You look at a situation like the Rams. Yeah, they extended Jared Goff. It didn't work out, but then they eventually flipped him for Matthew Stafford. And so maybe you can get lucky like that. I just think Baker Mayfield has shown you enough in this system that if you want to make that commitment to him, and if 3 or 4 years from now you're kind of stuck and you need to go make that Matthew Stafford type deal that the Rams made, okay. But I just don't know that there's a lot of alternatives out there if you don't just ride with Baker Mayfield right now. And frankly, if he plays like he did in the second half of the season, all these conversations are going to sound foolish.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is everybody points to Wentz and Goff, and I get it. They hit into a tough spot. They both also went to the Super Bowl, or their teams went to the Super Bowl while they were the starting quarterback. Browns fans in the Browns front office will sign up for that. They will take that. I guarantee it. All right. Best moves for each and every one of the 32 teams. This is according to The Athletic, and this is an interesting one. They say long-term, Greg Newsome, just drafting him. Short-term, though, Troy Hill because of the value of his versatility. I thought that was very interesting and very well thought out.
Yeah, I like that pick because Troy Hill playing in the slot, that's become such an important position. And it was a position last year the Browns really didn't have a handle on. They brought in Kevin Johnson to kind of man that. He had the injury in training camp, and when he came back, he just didn't really produce like they wanted him to. MJ Stewart was there, and he was okay. He made a couple plays, but just a down-to-down coverage guy wasn't what they needed. So bringing in Troy Hill, it adds some stability on the inside. If you need him to, he can play to the outside, and I think that's really important because we know Denzel Ward misses time. Greedy Williams is coming off an injury. Greg Newsome is a rookie, so having Troy Hill gives you that flexibility if you've got to move him outside here and there. And just locking down that inside spot. So now you can have Greedy and Greg Newsome focus on the outside, figure out what you want to do there. Denzel Ward can kind of do what he wants to do on the outside, or you can have him follow somebody for a game. It just increases the flexibility they have.
And, when you talk about Greg Newsome, and again, I know they haven't played an NFL game yet, but he certainly has the look and the attitude of a guy that's going to be an NFL cornerback and a good one for a while.
Yeah, Browns fans should be very excited about Greg Newsome. I think he's going to make an impact quickly. I think he's going to really push Greedy for that job. I think Greedy will be the default starter when we open training camp on July 27th, but it wouldn't surprise me if we get to that first off day or we come off that first preseason game and the conversation is, is it time to maybe give Greg Newsome a shot to be that number 2 corner opposite of Ward? I think he's got that type of talent where he can make an impact right away. He's still really young, which is exciting. And the other thing about Newsome too, we talked about Troy Hill playing inside, but Joe Woods kind of indicated that maybe Greg Newsome can move to the inside too if they needed him there. Ultimately, you want him to be an outside corner. You picked him in the first round. That's the premium position. But if you can find some work for him on the inside, especially if Greedy Williams locks down that number 2 spot, it's a great way to get him on the field.
So we'll shift our attention briefly. Most overlooked offseason additions. This is according to the Bleacher Report. They have number 1, Curtis Samuel by the Washington football team. Number 2, John Johnson from the Browns. We'll come back to him. Carlos Dunlap, Seattle. Mike Hilton from Cincinnati is 4, the defensive back. I don't think anybody in Cleveland has overlooked the addition of John Johnson. That's kind of their marquee signing.
That's almost like it's just been so long since it happened. It feels like it was 2 years ago, but that was a giant signing for this team. Like you said, Browns fans certainly don't forget it. I think maybe it wasn't a real glamorous signing as far as from the national perspective goes. I think it did get some love when it first happened, but it has sort of flown under the radar since. But Browns fans have certainly not forgotten what John Johnson meant for him to come here and be one of those safeties that's going to be out there opposite either Ronnie Harrison or Grant Delpit, or maybe they'll all 3 be on the field together. That was a great signing by Andrew Berry. I think this is just one of those things where so much has happened since that signing. Maybe all of a sudden it is a little underrated.
The other ones that kind of pop out, Anthony Walker, that one I think is getting overlooked a little bit. And we talked about him earlier. Troy Hill, just because, he was part of that defense with John Johnson, and he can solve a couple of problems if they should arise during the season.
Yeah, we're talking about 2 starters there. I know Troy Hill, like I said, he's, your slot guy, so maybe he's not technically a starter, but you consider that position a starting position. Anthony Walker, he's going to start at middle linebacker, and everything in that group is going to kind of rotate around him. He's probably going to end up wearing the green sticker. He's going to fill that BJ Goodson role. And, he's only 25. He's a guy that could potentially play himself into a longer-term contract if he plays well and gives them what they want. And then you really got some stability in that second level of your defense. So, John Johnson got the headlines, but Anthony Walker on a 1-year deal, Troy Hill on it's technically not a 1-year deal, but it kind of is with the flexibility they have after this season. I think both those guys could play into longer contracts.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Dan, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Yep, thank you.
All right, Dan Labbe, remember, you can read him in the Plain Dealer as well as on cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, John Fanta will join us. We will talk Browns football. Damian Woody will tell us what he thinks Baker Mayfield needs to do for the Browns to get where they want to go deep in the playoffs. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football. This from Get Up, Damian Woody, former NFL player, talking about what Baker Mayfield will need to do for the Browns to reach their ultimate goal of going deep into the playoffs and possibly to the Super Bowl.
Listen, I think they should have Super Bowl aspirations, but here's the thing. When you're talking about teams in that upper echelon, usually the difference comes to the quarterback position. And so the question remains, if it comes down to Baker Mayfield and some of these other quarterbacks, can he go toe-to-toe? Can he go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes? That's what it's going to come down to. I always said, if you want to separate yourself, especially deep in the season, you got to have moments. We know they got a great offensive line. We know that they got probably the best duo tandem running backs in the league. Odell Beckham is coming back. But in order for the Cleveland Browns to take that next step, Baker Mayfield is going to have moments against some of the other elite quarterbacks in the AFC. That remains to be seen.
Let's bring in John Fanta. And John, it's a very valid point, and I think one that Browns fans need to remember. Baker, the moment has never been too big for Baker Mayfield.
It has never been too big, and Dave, great to see you. I find it interesting that a lot of the footage that we just saw of Baker Mayfield was from the 2019 season. And you can't go from one season to another with Baker Mayfield with all the change that has occurred in his career. There has never been a moment too big for this guy because it seems like as they get bigger, he lives for them. In the beginning of that game at Cincinnati last year, he is way off against the Bengals. It looks like he is up against a wall and is not going to be able to fight back, and the Browns are going to have a bad division loss. Instead, with his back against the wall, he takes on the challenge. He delivers. He's missing his head coach. He's missing different players on the team. He's missing a lot of different pieces to a normal game week. For his first postseason game, and Baker Mayfield did what he had to do, made the key plays when he had to, and managed the game for a playoff win. And you cannot overstate how much it means as a quarterback to win a postseason game in the National Football League when you're still relatively new to this league. So for me, yes, of course, the great teams in the NFL and those playoff games come down to a quarterback making a couple extra plays. But Baker Mayfield, yes, he has his flaws, but I've been convinced enough in big spots to see him deliver. Even early on in his career, when things were rocky with the organization, Baker Mayfield has shown me enough to say, do I believe in Baker Mayfield in the big moment? Yes. Yes. Are there little things that Baker Mayfield can get better at? Absolutely. But with a normal offseason and a coach in Kevin Stefanski that now he has familiarity with, I expect those things to grow.
I would agree as well, and I think the national narrative is a little different, but that's fine. How do you think this team, this Browns team, will handle the high expectations in their national expectations, their local expectations? How do you think they handle the high expectations this year?
So, Dave, thinking about this question, you could zone in on the offense, all the big game playmakers. There's only one football. How does Baker distribute? I focus on the defense. Let's face it. The consensus is that the Browns had one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, particularly in their pass coverage. Now the consensus is that the Cleveland Browns will have one of the most improved defenses in the National Football League. How do you manage those expectations when in week one, where overreactions live, you're going to have to go to Kansas City with potentially 8 new defensive starters in that unit? So how does this defense handle the elevated expectations? I am really, really intrigued to see how Andrew Billings plays a role. We expect that he's going to play a major role for this team. He opted out last year due to COVID-19. What is he going to do for this defense? What is Malik Jackson, a guy like that, going to do for the Browns? And then I zone in on the linebacker core. Because if there were still an area where I say to myself, okay, I think the Browns are going to be better in that area, but I'm still uncertain, Dave, I still zone in on the linebackers. I think Anthony Walker is going to add an experienced presence, someone who can make plays, and is going to be someone that they can count on. Sione Takitaki has made big plays, but has also shown us at times that he needs to work on certain things. And then you bring in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and you're expecting him to play a role in your defense. He's labeled as a potential steal in the NFL draft. What is he going to do in this linebacker core? So I'm confident that I think the Browns, with bringing in John Johnson III, bringing in Troy Hill, that secondary is going to be better. But I do look at the fact that last year they were not really able to apply pressure to quarterbacks. If you're going to apply pressure to quarterbacks, it means that you have faith. You have faith in what you have in your pass coverage. You have faith in whichever linebackers are dropping back. So I'm wondering about that more than anything. And that's where I say to myself, with all the new starters and a consensus that they're going to be a potentially really good defense, you've got to handle it and really almost humble yourselves during training camp to try to build this thing up the right way. I'm not as worried about the offense because we've seen them prove last year. The only element that's kind of back in the equation is Odell Beckham Jr., but I expect things are going to get hashed out there. The defense is where I do wonder about how they manage expectations. And I think the way you manage expectations is you have to sort of take it day by day and remember what happened last year. There might be a lot of new faces, but the message has to be sent. Hey, guys, this defense was not good last year, and if we're going to build this the right way, this is how we have to do it during training camp.
So that leads to this question. What do the Browns have to do in 2021 in order to make it a successful season? What would they need to do for it to be considered a success, just in your mind?
Make the postseason. I'm not at a level where I'm going to say you have to win the AFC North for it to be a successful season. And the reason why I say that is because I have a high level of respect for the Baltimore Ravens, and they could very well win it with a 13-4 record. And if the Cleveland Browns go 12-5, am I going to sit here and say that the season's not a success? No, I don't think you can say that. I don't think that that's fair. But I do think for the Browns that a success of a season, making the postseason again, winning at least one playoff game, and you'd like to sit here and say that look, the goal is to win a Super Bowl. But when you set a goal, that doesn't necessarily always define what makes a successful season. For me, what would make a successful season? If they make it to championship Sunday, it's a resounding success. If they fall just short, there's reason to be upset because those are the types of Sundays you want to be playing on. And the Cleveland Browns have the talent to be playing on AFC Championship Sunday. I think what's hard is when you realize that Pat Mahomes and that Lamar Jackson and that the Tennessee Titans just got Julio Jones. You know, it's something. Somebody said this to me. Isn't it the Browns' luck that now they're really good again? And look at these other teams in the AFC. My response to that is it doesn't. You want to be really good, and the Browns are going to be a really good, potentially great football team that could win a championship. So for me, a success would be getting to championship Sunday. I'm not going to sit here and say they have to win the AFC North. It would certainly be the goal, and they certainly should be in week 18. They should be playing or hovering in the AFC North picture to win it. That's what I would define as a successful season.
John Fanta and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll shift our focus a little bit. Talk a little Cavs, talk a little Indians. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We're going to shift our focus a little bit, start talking a little bit at the Indians, getting ready for Game 2 of a 3-game series against the Tigers over at Progressive Field. Last night, Eli Morgan got his first career win in the big leagues. Let's take a listen to Eli Morgan, the winner against the Tigers yesterday.
Anytime we win, it's fun in the clubhouse. For me personally, for it to be my first major league victory is a big moment for me. The guys were stoked for me, as we should be, and we put a stomping on them today, and it was a really fun day at the ballpark. It was great to get a win after yesterday.
He goes out there so poised every single time. Like I was kind of saying about Ernie, like you'd think he'd been in the league for a lot longer than he is. He goes out there with a no heartbeat, going out there being aggressive, and he's got the stuff to be here. And I think each outing he's shown that he's getting a little bit better every time. And to go out there and get his first big league win is huge, and super pumped for him. And now he's got things he's going to go work on, and I'm excited to see his next outing.
So, John Fanta, this is how banged up the Indians' rotation has been. Eli Morgan became the 4th player this year, and we're not even in July yet, to win his first game in the big leagues. The others were Sam Hentges, J.C. Mejia, Nick Sandlin out of the bullpen, Eli Morgan now the 4th. They're piecing it together somehow, some way, just 2 games out of first place.
Can we just sit here for a second and give appreciation to the baseball franchise in this town? Because the Cleveland Indians are 42-33 and have every reason to make an excuse for having a bad season. They really do. They've had everything hit them. And yet, when you have a Hall of Fame manager in your dugout and you are a pitching factory, that's what this organization, that's what Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, it has been their calling card. And there is that phrase, it's an old-time phrase, you go as far as your pitching takes you. The Indians have embodied that to a T here thus far this season. And sure, are they in a division in which they can beat up on competition? Yes, but you still have to do it. And when you don't have any members of your opening day rotation and are now relying on different guys that would otherwise be in the minors, it says something. It says something about their culture. It says something about their manager. And to me, it says something about Jose Ramirez, who puts up a 5 RBI night last night. He blows it open with a 3-run shot just inside of the foul pole and right. Jose Ramirez is a superstar. And superstar players just win. And as long as Jose Ramirez has been an everyday Cleveland Indian, the Indians have won. And he doesn't say a lot, but he expects to win. And this Indians ball club is about to have a very difficult month of July. You're going to have the Astros for this upcoming weekend. You've got the Athletics in the month of July. You have a couple of series with the Tampa Bay Rays. It's going to be a difficult month. But you hope that as Franmil Reyes and Roberto Perez come back, that Zach Plesac, who's close to coming back, he may have a couple of starts at AAA and then get himself up to the majors. You hope that some of these rotation pieces are going to be coming back shortly, that the Indians' young guys have been forced into roles that they weren't planning on, but that they've grown a confidence about themselves since they've still been a part of keeping this ship afloat, that those young guys can still contribute, but that the star power of a Reyes and a leader like Roberto Perez can come back and that they could piece this together. Surely the Rosarios, Ahmed and Eddie, have definitely done a better job for the Indians offensively here, and they are still looking for Cesar Hernandez to get back to the level that he was at last year. But I think that the Indians get a lot of criticism, and some of it is very fair. But I'm here to say today, Dave Bacon, credit to the Tribe. There's interesting, compelling baseball in Cleveland for yet another season. And whether or not you like how they put it together, if you don't like the fact that the wallet isn't thick for ownership, just sit for a moment and remember, you could be in Kansas City. You could be in Detroit. You could be in a baseball town that right now has nothing to talk about but some rookie's debut, and this is part of a 5 or 6 year rebuild project. In Cleveland, we haven't had that now in several years. And it's nice to have a winner in this town. And it's a credit to these guys and the leadership in the organization that is able to put together a culture that seemingly is consistent. And if it were that easy, a lot of other organizations would try it. But in Cleveland, there's something to be said about these fighting Franconas who just keep on forging along.
Let's shift our attention to the Cavs now. If the Cavs take either of the Jalen's, Suggs or Green, Do you think they trade Colin Sexton, and what does that look like? Who do you think they can get back in the event they do trade Colin Sexton?
I do think that they would have to trade Colin Sexton. And there are a variety of reasons why this is a move that makes sense. For me, Colin Sexton is not going to be one of the best 3 or 4 players on a playoff NBA team. He is a very good scorer. He's a talented player. But Colin Sexton hasn't shown me enough to say he is a foundation piece for the future of the Cavaliers organization. And I think the sample size could be unfair to some, but that's my thought. So in my mind, if the Cavaliers were to trade Sexton, here's a couple of areas that I would target. I would take a look at potentially the Philadelphia 76ers. There's no question that Philadelphia is looking at shopping Ben Simmons. I don't think that Colin Sexton alone is going to be anywhere near what the Sixers want. That's where the Cavaliers might have to get involved with some future draft picks. And you're going to have to be savvy with those. But if you bring in one of the Jalen's and you have Ben Simmons on your team and you have faith still in a Darius Garland and some of the other pieces that the Cavaliers have, you're saying to yourself, we're not going to be having a top 5 pick. We're going to grow as a team. So Ben Simmons is one option from Philly, and I think that there would have to be a draft pick, if not 2, from the Cavaliers. And then at that point you say, is it worth it? I think Ben Simmons might need a change of scenery, Dave. I really do. I think that Philadelphia's run its course. I still think Ben Simmons is an elite defender, former NBA Defensive Player of the Year. Look, the shot selection, it speaks for itself. And you wonder, can it still be worked out? But I still like some of the pros, and you see 7 assists per game. He's an elite passer. The other area is the Lakers. The Lakers could look to shop Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma's in a situation where he potentially could use a change of scenery. Things have run its course with Kuzma. He is a quality wing player who I think could be even better in a different situation because of the fact that he does some similar things that LeBron James does. He is nowhere near as talented as LeBron James. But his skill set and game are kind of in that role of that 3-4 type of player. And I think that Kuzma at times has felt the pressure of playing alongside LeBron James. And at times has kind of allowed those things to get to him a little bit. But he's a quality player. He rebounds the basketball well. And you're talking about a good role guy. And I think that the Cavaliers might explore options with the Lakers of Kuzma, maybe something else. Maybe a third team gets involved. In my mind, though, Colin Sexton is not going to be as valuable as he is right now, where the Cavaliers have the number 3 pick. They have an opportunity to get a playmaking, high-ceiling type of guard. They thought that would be Sexton, but I think with Sexton, he's a good player. But I think he's probably a backup player on a great team. There might be a team that still bets that Colin Sexton could be one of their better players. And so that's why in the here and now, you might not be able to get as much value on Colin Sexton at another time. That's why I think picking one of the Jalen's would then absolutely result in trading Colin Sexton.
John Fanta, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. Thanks, John.
You got it, Dave. Thank you.
All right, John Fanta. That'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. Scheduled guests tomorrow, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter Sam Amico from 48minutes.com. We'll see you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody.